Now we're recording. Now we're cooking here. Cooking with electricity. I refuse to say cooking with gas. All right, everybody, welcome to our presentation tonight about Putnam Valley's exploration of launching a program called Community Choice Aggregation, or CCA. This is the agenda that we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about what community choice aggregation is, including why communities are exploring doing it. And then I'll talk in some detail about existing programs in the Hudson Valley, just to provide some detail. And then we'll talk about what the next steps could look like as part of this exploration and potentially for the launch of community choice aggregation for Putnam Valley. And so before I turn it over to Ralph, let me just do the housekeeping etiquette. Please keep yourselves muted if you're not speaking, and your video's off for the time being until we get to the end of the presentation. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn my video off because we don't need to keep seeing me during this presentation. We can focus on the slides. But please do use the chat window to share questions in the meantime. And now I'm just going to turn it over to Ralph as I unmute him. Ralph, if you can unmute yourself, and then please let me have you take it over. You're there.
Hi, everybody. Hope you can hear me. My name's Ralph Smith. I'm on your town board, and I hope you can hear me well enough here. I appreciate you all coming to hear this presentation, to learn about this. You'll learn that we're in the education part of this endeavor. So this is about community choice aggregation, CCA. And if you're like me at this moment last year, I had no idea that it existed or what it was. So how did I hear of this? During our pandemic, I was going to lots of Zooms, lots of webinars, just spending the time learning lots of things for the town. And I heard about this community choice aggregation. I heard a presentation, and I knew what community was. I knew what a choice was, but aggregation, I had to sort of learn that was a collection of groups getting together, usually groups of people getting together. And so I came to find out that this was a way that people were coming together and using the power of numbers to lower their rate that they've been paying for electricity, and get 100% renewable energy from New York sources. Well, I heard the presentation. I thought, wow, that sounds pretty interesting to me. I always like saving money and keeping payments down, and I like renewable energy for our generation and generations to come, and jobs in New York. So I brought it to the town supervisor, Sam Oliverio, and he said, boy, that sounds pretty interesting. And a lot of communities are doing that. So then I brought it to the Climate Smart Task Force for presentation, and they sounded interested as well. We always were asking lots of questions, as we will continue to do this evening, and then brought it to the town board as well as the town attorney. So everybody was getting a shot at it. And there would continue to be lots of questions about it. And so basically, in my education, just to pass on, I always thought, well, I just pay electricity for electricity to NYSEG, just like everybody else in our community, right? And I came to find out that there was actually two parts of the bill, though. There was the part that has, you probably can't see it, but there's a part on the bill that has a provider. By the way, that will never change, and that's NYSEG. They're the ones who provide it to my house from the poles. They get it in here from the poles, and they bring it from where it comes from and bring it into my house so I can turn on the lights. And when the wires fall down in our next windstorm, the provider's got to put them back up, and that will always be NYSEG. But there's another part of the bill that's a little bit less than half usually on my bill, And that's the supply part. And that one is not always, doesn't always have to be NYSEG. It did at one point, but after a few years ago, it became possible to get a different provider. And thus it started to create a competition away from a sort of monopoly position where it was NYSEG, NYSEG, NYSEG. So many of you might not even realize that NYSEG is your supplier also. And if you don't make a choice, they are the default supplier. They get the money. That's what I discovered there. That there's two halves of the bills, and that if I didn't want NYSEG, I was going to have to opt out of NYSEG and find another provider. Now, this was where, I am a resident of this community, just like you, and I've been getting things in the mail, just like you, for the past year or two that say, why don't you come with us? We'll give you a $25 gift card if you just make us your supplier. And it always sounds like a good idea. However, I look at the fine print, I look at things like this and have pages of fine print. And I have to tell you, I don't end up acting on it because I don't have a lawyer on call. And it just makes me nervous to think I'm going to switch out of something, as it might make some of you feel that way. The good part is, though, when we look into this as a town, we have a lawyer on call. We have a lawyer an attorney that the town employs to take care of all of our legal questions. And so I brought all of this to the town attorney as well, and had him investigate it, and found out that the first thing that we had to do before anything is, if you want to investigate it, you have to pass an enabling law. Why do you have to do that? Lord only knows. That New York State says you have to do it. The Public Service Commission says you have to do it, so you have to do it. But I had an attorney, the town attorney, working for us now, and which I wouldn't have if it was just coming to my home. He looked at all the various verbiage that there was connected with community choice aggregation, and said, well, I like it. However, there's several things that I want changed. He changed them. And with those changes, passed the enabling law. So the town board has passed the enabling law. Does that mean we're in a CCA? Nope. Nope. We're not in the CCA. All that means is we can investigate it. And if we want to, we can be in one. But there's no commitment. By the way, was there any charge for that? No charge. Zero charge. No money paid out for that. Okay. Just so you know, the town is paid $0.00 for any of this. Okay. In addition to that, then the Public Service Commission says that if you're going to look into this, you have to have meetings with the public for the next 2 months after you pass the law. You've got to have 2 months of education and outreach, and that has to be done. You have to hire an administrator. The town has done this. Does that mean that you're in the program? Nope. We're not in any program. We're not signed up or anything. We have just picked a company that will educate our community, answer any of their questions, provide them any data that they choose. So we did that, and the company that we've appointed is named Joule, Joule, as in energy, Joule. And Jeff Demansky, who's on the call, works in conjunction with Joule to educate the community about these things. And that's what we're doing. We've got 4 meetings, public meetings, scheduled thus far. The dates are on the website. Obviously, you folks found out about them somehow. And we'll be having these meetings. If you can come to any or all of them, I anticipate they might be fairly similar. However, you can ask questions at any time in any one of them. Thing. One question is that people tend to have is this community solar? The answer is no, this is not community solar. I'm not saying that community solar is a bad thing. I'm not saying that community solar is not something that we won't look into as a town, because our job, I believe, as a town board is to look into any possibilities of good situations or money savings for our community. So that might come up in the future. However, this is just dealing with community choice aggregation, with getting together with other communities who are interested in this to try and get low cost electricity from 100% renewable resources in New York State. That's what we're talking about now. That's why we're having these meetings now, to give people information about them. Okay. I've talked a bit here, and let me just give it to Jeff so he can fill in some of the gaps that I may have just omitted while I was giving that brief introduction of how I got here.
That's great, Ralph. Thank you so much. That's a great stage setting. And yeah, I'll probably reflect on a number of the things that you said, and we'll continue the education and definitely look forward to taking questions from folks. And it's good. We already had somebody in the chat window who mentioned that they had a community solar subscription, that they saw a $67 credit. So there is always, confusion about that. But we're going to focus here about the CCA program as a way to do just what Ralph said, as a way to get a cost competitive price for electricity supply, and a way to make it easy for folks to only pay for renewables from New York State in a way that's beneficial, cost beneficial to them. So that's in a nutshell, as Ralph described, what community choice aggregation is all about. And so let me walk you through some slides to give you a sense. But in a nutshell, it's what he said. It's communities getting together, aggregating, to have leverage in the supply marketplace that was created by what Rob talked about, and I'll talk about in the next slide, to give a new choice for electricity supply. So that's what community choice aggregation means when you break it down. And so again, I'm going to go one-on-one, what and why about CCA. We'll talk about some existing programs, and then we'll talk about the steps. All right, so moving forward. So what is community choice aggregation in a sentence? This looks like poetry, but we can lay it out into this one sentence. It is, as Ralph described, it's a policy. It's based on a local law being passed by a city or town or village that gives them the ability to determine new default energy offerings, including electricity supply, and there is the potential for using it for community solar, but on behalf of its residents and small businesses. So we're talking about a new default electricity supply for residents and businesses within the community. This is based, just as Ralph said, on a marketplace that was created in New York State in the late 1990s. And the fancy phrase for what happened is called deregulation. And that's where they broke up the monopoly that Ralph was talking about. It used to be that the utility companies did it all, that they would own the power plants, and they would own they would determine the price coming out of the power plant, and then they would deliver that energy to their customers. Deregulation broke up that monopoly, making all of our utility companies, use the word provider, Ralph, but the word I like to use, just a real clarification, I think, is delivery companies. And if you look at your bills typically have a delivery section and a supply section. So there's two major portions of everyone's utility bills. And so what doesn't change, even if the community goes forward with this community aggregation program for a new supply choice, is the delivery. The delivery stays the same. And that's what those companies get paid for, making sure that they are reliable deliverers of packages, just like FedEx or UPS. Those packages, in this case, we're talking about the electricity. They don't make them, just like FedEx and UPS doesn't make the packages, but they make sure that they get there. And so that's what Ralph was talking about. They continue to do the repair service if there's a storm. They continue to do the billing. They continue to maintain the meter on your house, and they charge you for that. But nothing changes in terms of NYSEG being the delivery company. What we are talking about is this marketplace for supply. And because of deregulation, there are dozens and dozens of companies that allow all utility customers, as it says here, to choose an energy supply source. And many of you probably have experience with that. Many of you may have tried that over the years. There's a couple of reasons people would go out into that supply marketplace. One, to look for better price, a better cost than if the utility company was making that choice for you, or two, for more renewable price. So that's for more renewable sourcing, which came with a cost premium. All right, so two reasons, and we're going to revisit this again, this idea of why there was a marketplace. This, if you look back up at the definition, the policy enabling municipalities to determine a default energy offering, there is an existing default in a community before community choice aggregation launches. And that is by state mandate. The default setting in terms of supply, the state says if you don't take advantage of that energy marketplace for supply, if you don't do anything, then the state default, the mandate is that the utility company makes that decision for you. And they don't make money on it. They're not allowed to make money on it because of deregulation. It's a pass-through cost for them, but they also have no reason to do anything advantageous for it, in that decision making. And so it varies, and they're not allowed to fix it. And that rate can vary month to month. And this is a very interesting time to be talking about this because I have seen, I live in Central Hudson Territory. I live right up in Dutchess County in Beacon, almost Putnam. A very big jump in Central Hudson's latest rate. It almost doubled, partially because of the cold winter, but also the impact on the gas markets that a lot of us have heard about with some energy shocks that took place in our country in the last month or so. And it's possible that ripple is going to be felt in the other utility territories. So it's the risk of being with the utility companies that the rates can vary significantly. All right, so let's revisit this idea of what are the choices that a utility customer has in a community before a CCA program launches. And this is a menu that just imagine yourself walking into a restaurant and you got to pick one thing off the menu. This is my electricity supply menu. And right now, every utility customer in New York State has these two choices. The first choice, as we talked about, is the New York State determined default choice, where if you don't make a choice, then the utility company determines for you where your supply is coming from, where your electricity is made, how it's made. And so there's an asterisk on NYSEG right there because they're the current default for the community. But as we've been talking about pretty much at length, anybody can go out into that marketplace for number two, choice number two, to get into a contract for a third-party supplier with an ESCO. And the idea there is, as we talked about, the reason they would do this typically is to get a better price than what they've been paying when the utility makes a choice. The other main reason is to promote more renewables, which comes, as I said before, with a cost premium. So that's the current situation. And now there's a third empty box in our table. And if the community goes forward and launches a CCA program, that box gets filled in with choice three, which is the supply decision made by an aggregation of communities, a bunch of partner communities who went out with a request for proposals so suppliers could competitively bid to be the supplier for those communities. The asterisk moves down to choice three in a community that launches a program. It's the nature of the way the program was enabled in New York State, is that it's the power of numbers and the use of this opt-out mechanism, this default mechanism that gives it the ability to get that win-win scenario in terms of getting renewables at a very competitive rate. And sometimes, and very possibly, better than the rate people have been paying for non-renewables. But it is structured as an opt-out program, which is just really changing it. If you look at the top red arrow to the bottom red arrow, it changes the situation from the New York State determined default to a locally determined default. By the leaders of the communities in partnership with the administrator that they chose to help them navigate the energy marketplaces to make sure that people are protected. And so that becomes kind of the third reason that this program was enabled in the state and should not be overlooked. But I'll get back to
Jeff,
the reasons why in a
Jeff,
second.
I could, if I could jump in for a second,
Please.
Jeff.
Yeah, Ralph, please.
Uh, so Jeff mentioned strength in numbers. I think I mentioned that a couple of times. So you can probably guess that I'm watching these things. You know, I'm money obsessed, okay, and I'm watching all these things, okay. And one of the other communities that may be going out for a request for proposals, in other words, how low will they go to supply electricity, would be Rochester. They're looking into to getting their CCA started now as well. Just as an example, we in Putnam Valley, we have give or take 11,000 people, you know, give it roughly, okay. Rochester might be in the same request for proposals. It's got 205,000 people. So when you say strength in numbers, you can imagine the difference between the attention of that a community like Putnam Valley looking for a better rate gets with 11,000 people compared to Putnam Valley and Rochester and maybe others that now have over 200,000 people. Okay. And of course, you would divide that into homes, but you can see the difference in numbers. So that's where, you know, another difference between me getting a single letter in my house to try and get me to sign up, and with a very large amount of customers getting attention from these companies. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, bingo. That's exactly right. Thank you, Ralph. That's a great enhancement to that. All right, so let me go a little deeper here, and I'll show my bias towards where I'm living. And Ralph, we got to coordinate so I can get a copy of your NYSEG bill to use on a slide. But what I'm showing here is my Central Hudson bill. But generally, what we're showing is kind of agnostic. It doesn't matter which utility company. What we're showing on here is just as Ralph described on his bill, is that your utility bill is actually two bills in one. Just as we've been saying, there is a delivery section and there's a supply section. On my example bill here, the top section of the bill is the delivery charges section. And again, that's the section that Central Hudson, in this case, the utility company, makes money on. It's what they get paid for. It's what they get paid to do, to deliver energy. And you can see, as you've probably seen, if you look at your utility bill, there's lots of line items. Each one is multiplied by my electricity usage that month. And you can see repeated again and again, 761 kilowatt hours. So that's how much electricity I used, 761 kilowatt hours. And that amount is multiplied by in each line, some cents per kilowatt hour to result in a dollar charge. And so, and Ralph is right, predominantly for most months, it has been historically where my delivery charges are more than my supply charges. So the middle section inside this red box here is my supply charges section. And this is an example of what a bill looks like for a community choice aggregation program participant. I live in the city of Beacon, and the city of Beacon has been in a CCA program since the middle of 2019. We're going into the end of our second year here of the 2-year contract of being in a program. And it is a fixed period program. And it is there's a couple of things that are fixed when you do a program. The period is fixed. You know, this contract that you do with a supplier, the municipality does with the supplier, is a fixed period, 2 years for Beacon, and the rate is fixed. So instead of what would have been 3 line items, which would look like just a part of my delivery section up above, there would have been 3 line items had Central Hudson still been making my supply decision. Being in a CCA program for electricity supply, whatever line items that utility company does when it's making your decision are replaced by just one single line item with the same rate every single month of that period. And so for me, for the 100% renewables sourcing from New York State sources, it's 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour every month, which is multiplied by my usage. So it's the rate that's fixed. My supply charges will vary month to month because the fixed rate's multiplied by the variation in usage that I have, but that rate never changes. And that rate is very competitive. And it was, it had to be better than the average that we had paid to Central Hudson over the previous 12 months when we launched the program. So the 12-month average for Central Hudson was higher than the 6.361 cents. And that 12-month average was for predominantly non-renewable sources. So therein lies the win-win in terms of what this power of numbers strategy can get you. I'm just going to point out briefly too, I am also, as our chat comment mentioned about having a community solar subscription, and as Ralph mentioned, community solar is something that is also available out there. It is different than electricity supply, but I am a community solar subscriber. And so if you look under here in the payments and adjustments section, the fancy full name for community solar projects in New York State is Community Distributed Generation, often abbreviated CDG, but shown here, the first line under my payments and adjustments section is my Community Distributed Generation credit. And just as the person described in the chat window that they got a $67 deduction, this month I got an $81 deduction in return for my being a virtual owner of some solar panels in a field that's of solar that's not on my house. It is in my same utility territory, but located differently. But just to point out that this community solar benefit is different than supply. It's a different part of the bill. They live in two different sections. And what we're focused on right now is this idea that you can get a competitive fixed rate for supply through this aggregation program. Any other comments on the bill before I move on, Ralph?
No, just one thing to point out. So your town has paid to this point $0.00 for any of this information, et cetera, that we've done so far. Just so you know.
Yeah, and it's good to clarify too. You said that in the beginning, Ralph, that you picked a company, you picked Jewel to be the administrator to help you lead through this exploration. Just exactly to what you said, you haven't paid Jewel anything. We work at risk on the hope that this program works out and launches. And it's
just so you know, what I'd like to point out to everybody is, if we were to put out a request for proposals in the future, the company named Jewel gets paid by the supplying company. That has to be included in the electricity price. So it has to be included, not on top of the electricity price. So when you send out a request for proposals, the cost for the company like Jewel is in the price of the electricity. So there's nothing added on. There's no add-on value. And by the way, what you can see here, I keep throwing these little extras because I've had lots of these questions in the past from myself and others. You get one bill. You don't get two bills. You don't have to write two checks, deal with two things, one bill. Okay. Sorry. There you go, Jeff.
Such good points. Two very good points there. All of this is done right on the NYSEG bill, if it happens, if this program launches. There's not a separate bill. And I was just about to say that, but you spoke about it perfectly. The way that if this program does work out and it does launch, yes, the fee that pays for Jewel and my nonprofit, I'm a partner to Jewel, has to be in that fixed rate, and that still has to be competitive. It still has to meet the threshold that the town of Putnam Valley would accept to launch the program. And so it's just this is no program that relies on subsidies. It's just the power of the marketplace where it's symbiotically everybody can benefit. All right, so what does the process look like? And we've alluded to this a few times. This is the steps to launching a program. It starts with adopting an enabling local law, which gives a community the ability to do the exploration and to potentially launch. And down here in step 9, it ends with launch. We are right here with the red arrow. We're here in the public outreach and education period, which means that Putnam Valley has passed an enabling local law, and it has selected a CCA administrator. An administrator can't just be any company. It has to be a company that's filed an implementation plan, hundreds of pages, that says it complies, that describes how it complies with the Public Service Commission's order. So there is oversight of this program by the state. And then you can jump into, which we've just started, the public outreach and education period. And we'll be doing multiple things during this phase. And the only ask we have of people at this point in time is helping us to spread the word, sharing information about the public events that we have scheduled and will be scheduling, and suggesting ideas to us about how we can better spread the word, including inviting us to do presentations to your group, just like we're going to be doing for Lake Peekskill on April 12th, the Lake Peekskill community. All right, but that's where we are in the public outreach and education period, which is the minimum of 2 months that Ralph talked about. Then we have to get approval for our outreach efforts to date. We have to get regulatory approval, and then we can request the data that would go into step 5, the bid, that could go out to the suppliers to review when they know and they see how big the aggregation is, so they know how competitive they can be for bidding back for that fixed rate for supply. That is the make or break point. That's the kind of what I call the go, no go point. We're here right now, but down here is the go, no go point. It's the community sets its criteria for what it will accept in terms of rates, and making sure that there is no restrictions, there's no, undue charges or anything funny that would affect the community members. And if a bid comes back and is compliant, that's when you proceed to step 6. And that's when you're moving towards launch, but we're not there yet. But so we're doing the exploration. That's part of the initial phases. After
Jeff,
the bid is awarded.
Jeff, can I jump in here for a
Yeah, go
second?
ahead. Yep, before I finish up, go ahead, Ralph.
You're up to the bid there. We had a couple of good questions, and they're questions that I've asked in the past. One of them is it truly a fixed rate, and how long is it for? So I can tell you that with our attorney, it will be a truly fixed rate. This is a rate that is, and this may contrast to some of the offers you've gotten in an envelope from home. This is a contractually fixed rate that will not change. Okay, I made absolutely sure of that. And how about the duration, Jeff?
It can vary. It's been coincidental to some degree, but all of the programs, Westchester's first and second version of the program we launched with Beacon as one of the 10 communities, and the Rockland program we just launched in the fall of 2020, coincidentally, they're all 2-year contracts. They can vary, and they're probably going to get a little longer as the communities and the suppliers get more comfortable, but it's been so we get bids between 18 months, and to date, it's been 36 months or 3 years. We've always settled on the rate offered, and the time periods just coincidentally to some degree been 2 years. So it's a good average expectation.
And one other thing that was asked is, if this ends up going way down this list here, if it ends up going, does everyone get automatically enrolled? So, of course, everybody who does not pick anything now is automatically enrolled with NYSEG, right? NYSEG is the default company now. So, with the exception of some categories, people would get auto-enrolled with a blatant opportunity to opt out. Okay, so there are some people, for instance, there are some people who get assistance with their electric bill, financial assistance. They are automatically exempt. They would not be enrolled. And Jeff, you correct me if I make any errors.
That's correct.
I've looked into this because we don't want our community members to lose anything, frankly. And people who have there's some sort of I don't know NYSEG's name for it, but it's where you pay an even electrical bill through the year, so that you don't get hit with a huge one when the air conditioner's on or something like that. Well, that's how this program is structured. You have an even payment through the year, so it's pretty much the same thing as that program. So those people would be automatically enrolled.
Let me just correct you that you are correct. That's called levelized billing or budget billing.
Yes.
And any billing arrangement that somebody has with the utility company doesn't change. But we don't put people in a levelized billing. The one thing that we do fix is the rate. And so the payment could vary, but it wouldn't vary in terms of what they pay if they're in levelized or budget billing. But that's, and just as you said, though, importantly, they're still included because that's not bill pay assistance. That's just a kind of an arrangement to give more certainty to the way they pay their bills.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for that clarification. So is it truly fixed rate? I think I answered that as far as now the opt-out part. Before any implementation of this program, residents would receive in the mail with a return mailer an explanation of the program, because some people haven't seen what you've seen tonight, of course. They would receive an explanation in the mail and a postage paid return note that says if you want to opt out. You checked off the opt out and you're out. Let me give you the follow-up questions. Is there a charge to opt out? No. If I opt out and I want to opt back in, is there a charge? No. If I go out, I go in, I go out, and I go in, is there a charge? No. No charges opting out, opting in. As a matter of fact, I believe that that's New York State law. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, that's part of the order. There's no charges.
Right. So,
And you don't have to opt out in the beginning. You can opt out or opt in at any time during the contract period.
thank you very much. So anytime opt out. If you find your own supplier, God bless you. Get a better rate and go for it. I mean, that's all I want for people. If you can get a better rate, get a better rate. That's the only reason I'm looking at this at all.
And that's
See
the
if
one
I get
other
a better rate.
that's the one other major category of exempt people. Well, actually, two other major categories. So people who are not included, who are considered not eligible when the program launches, the bill pay assistance you talked about. If you already have a third-party supplier, if you already have a contract, you're not included. We don't kick you out of your existing contract. Or if you have a block on your account, as some people have placed with the utility company, with NYSEG, because maybe they had a bad experience with a supplier in the past, a block makes you ineligible as well. You're not in the program. So those are the major categories of ineligible customers.
So to respond, you can opt out at any time and you can opt in at any time without a fee or a charge or a penalty.
Including those exempt customers. So if somebody wants to remove the block and they want to get into the program, they can do it. If they're in an existing contract and they want to take advantage of the program rate, they should contact their company and the agreement, make sure there's no penalty from that company, not us, and then you can join the program if it launches. All right.
Here's a very complex question here, Jeff, that I'll try and ask you. In the event that one commits to a CCA, how would one be able to compare the CCA price, which we'll know, to NYSEG's pricing on a month-to-month basis in order to determine, the lowest rate and switch back and forth?
Yeah, I did see somebody asked, do we publish the rates on a month-to-month basis? And yeah, that's one thing my nonprofit does, is we go to the sites for the utilities every month and we put them on a chart compared to our program rates so people can visually see the differences between our program rate and what is that current month's rate. So we do track that and report that. And I can also share, there is the same place we go to get that information is something the state set up to make it easy, one, to see what your current utility rate is for supply. And they do it too, so you can shop for other third-party offers. So it's the same source of information.
Nice. See, I learned something too. I just learned something there as well. Thank you very much.
All right, so I know there's more. I'm going to move on, and then we're going to cover some of the same things you talked about in terms of those the mechanisms, the next steps. But we were talking about if this is where the bid would be awarded after the go no-go point. There's more education and outreach. That's why that's what we do, is make sure there's education and outreach. And then, that with that step 7, the outreach period, that's when we will know the price and the source and everything. And that's part of our education. Right now, we're talking theoretical and potential, but in step 7, we'll know what the program rates are. And so there is a required at least one additional meeting. But my nonprofit's involvement was a decision by Jewel to go way beyond. And so we'll do plenty, and we never go away. Matter of fact, we in the good old days when we could see people, We held office hours, and we will do that again when we could actually, in a safe way, vaccinated way, see each other again. We'll start holding office hours again, just so that people always have access to understand what's going on and to get help with any decisions they want to make.
And thank you, Jeff. By the way, there will be no employee of our town responsible for this. There will be no tax impact because you think, well, gee, who's going to handle this stuff? This is handled by the company that is getting paid by the supplier.
That's right. All right, so then the program launch happens after that additional education and after the logistical processing of the people who opted out and who stayed in the program between the supplier and NYSEG. And then the program launches, and we do our darndest to spread the word and build awareness, but the official requirement for launching the program is that there's a letter sent to everybody. If the program launches, everyone who's an eligible customer gets the letter that Ralph described, which has a detailed description of the program, a 2-page frequently asked questions, which on the website will be, there's a website where you can find this information as well, detailed FAQs, and it'll have the description of the opt-out methods, which I'll talk about in a couple of slides. So let's move forward. But this is the part, believe it or not, we're at the second bullet now, where I'm going to talk about no great length, but just reference the other communities through the partnership slides to describe what it looks like and just to give you comfort in knowing that this has happened and this is working with other communities. What we're looking at here is the existing CCA program I referenced a few times that started in the middle of 2019. The name of the partnership is the Hudson Valley Community Power Program, or the partnership. And it's a partnership of those 10 communities shown in the lower left under community partners. And as I mentioned, the city of Beacon, the town of Clinton, which is in Dutchess, Cold Spring, which is in Putnam, the town of Fishkill again, which is in Dutchess, Marbletown, which is over in Ulster, the 2 New Paltzes, town and village, which are both in Ulster, Phillipstown, of course, which is a neighbor to Putnam Valley, the city of Poughkeepsie, and the town of Red Hook, both of them in Dutchess County. So you don't have to be contiguous, just as Ralph was talking about, just based on timing. Jewel is working with other CCA programs, and we're actually working on relaunching into another potential contract for these communities, including these additional communities, the towns of Gardner, which is also in Ulster, and Rhinebeck, which is in Dutchess, and Saugerties back in Ulster, and Nelsonville, which is actually right inside Phillipstown, to be part of this aggregation. But because of the timing of the outreach, what we've talked about, Ralph mentioned, is that it's likely that Putnam Valley would be part of an aggregation for the bid for a request for proposals that would be part of the same one that the city of Rochester is going to be doing, the same time frame. But this is an example of what a partnership looks like, how many communities to get to that leverage point. All of these communities chose Jewel, and you get to see Jewel's logo in the lower left. They're the approved administrator. Jewel picked my organization, Hudson Valley Energy, to be the program manager, to do outreach and education, and to be behind the helpline, answering phone calls of people who have questions, answering emails, doing the office hours. Collectively, as part of that bid that we talked about, we picked that company called Direct Energy, and you saw their name on my bill, so that's the supplier. And I include Central Hudson on this slide to just emphasize for people that we're not replacing Central Hudson. They're still the delivery company. The website is shown for this partnership, HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com, and it's an example of what the website would look like for a program that Putnam Valley would be part of, with all of the information, including the form that you can use as one of the mechanisms if you want to opt out or opt in to the program. So it's one of the mechanisms I'll talk about in a second. But these, again, are the benefits. Let me talk in details about the why of the program. There are these 3 overlapping win-win-win scenarios. And so I'm using those circles in the lower right. There's the ability to marry environmental benefits with cost benefits, program rates, with, not least of importance, the consumer protection benefits. All 3 together is what this program seeks to do. We have some specific examples of what the environmental benefit is. The current Hudson Valley Community Power Program that I just showed that slide, it's more than 25,000 households in those 10 communities. majority of which, 90% plus of the communities choosing a 100% renewable default supply. All of them are paying for renewables from New York State only for supply through their supply part of their bill. Because of that, through the end of 2020, 200,000 plus metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions were avoided because they were not paying for renewables. So there's immediate impacts on the grid and on the suppliers that are part of the grid. It has a very powerful impact, immediate and also projecting forward. Somebody asked a question I saw in the chat, is there enough renewables available in New York State for CCA programs? Currently, based on the communities that are working forward to launch a CCA program, the answer is yes. The way the markets work, there's two parallel markets. There's electrons that are produced regardless of the power production source. But then there's a secondary market for basically the renewable attribute. And that's why renewables tend to cost a little bit more. You need a renewable source to create those renewable attributes. And these programs allow a little bit of previously generated renewables to be part of the mix that different utility companies, private ESCOs could utilize, and CCAs can utilize. There is currently a supply to do about twice as much in terms of CCA communities as is currently available. But it's not limitless. So it is sort of a, not to sound like a Ginsu commercial, but it's sort of a first come, first serve. But Putnam Valley is safely in position to take advantage of existing supply. We're looking forward to actually the point where there's so many CCA communities, and there are more than 130 communities in New York State that have passed the enabling law. About not even half of those, about 50 plus are in active CCA programs. So it's a beautiful problem that we'll have when there is so much demand that there's not enough supply. But that will create an easier marketplace for more supply. So that's part of the market impact that these programs have. It's really beautiful, and it leads to better prices. The program rates, the upper right, again, it's a low fixed supply rate. It's competitive with the non-renewable utility rate that people have been paying, and potentially better. It's not guaranteed, but it is potentially better. But it's part of what we seek through the bid. It's what we tell the suppliers. You have to include all the administrative costs and still have a competitive bid that the community will accept. It is definitely better than the private or ESCO price that somebody could get as an individual. That's what Ralph said, that's what we talked about. The power of numbers, you get that better rate. It's not what I found is like these are appreciated, but what is most appreciated, I think, when people understand it, the consumer protection elements. This is something the town does for no economic benefit, but they do it for community benefit, to protect people from bad actors in the marketplace and to make it easy for them to take advantage of good opportunities to both promote renewables and to save, money. So there are no restrictions. This is like a public swimming pool membership or a public tennis court that the town sets up. In this case, though, it's an access to supply rate that they set up without any restrictions, no contract. Opt in, opt out any time. It is that low fixed supply rate. There's no funny business. People have had a bad experience where they've been in private ESCO contracts where it's been fixed for a period and then it turns variable. That just doesn't happen here. It's fixed for the period, and for example, the 2 years. There's no surprises. And additionally, this might be a personal bias, but I think it's important because energy, it's not something insignificant, but it's not the thing that people pay a lot of time for. So the idea is you have a team doing education and awareness building, answering questions and helping you in or out of the program. That's part of this, including explaining the difference between this and community solar and other things that might be confusing. So that's what we're here for. So I think it's part of the consumer protection benefit package. So
I think you've really summed it up, and I think we've sort of given a good overview of it. But there's always questions that come up.
Yeah.
So are we up to the question part now?
Almost. I can just go quickly. This is just the slide for who the administrator is. That's Jewel. They're the entity authorized to represent the community. They oversee the negotiation, and they're doing multiple programs in New York. They pick ... a local program manager, the last line, which is my organization. We're Hudson Valley Energy is our program that is doing this. We are going to lead the outreach and education and be here for the duration of the program. I'm hoping to make you tired of seeing me and hearing from me as we go through this, if we are lucky enough to launch. I'll just say here, there is another program that we launched. I think I referenced this at the end of the fall of 2020. We did another partnership program with 6 communities in Orange and Rockland territory. Jewel's still the administrator for all 6 of these communities. I'm still the local program manager, but we didn't pick Direct Energy, we picked Constellation. And here's another website with more good information. And then we can talk about steps. So what happens next? So we continue the outreach and education. If we do sufficient, and we will, outreach and education, we can go and to start to assemble a bid and look what the marketplace looks like. Jewel will look and see what the marketplace looks like. If it looks positive and the town agrees, we can issue a request for proposals, a bid. And if it comes back, that's something good, we will do that second round of education where we will know the details of the price, how long it will be, what the savings will be, what the sourcing of the electricity will be. And there in that second bullet under after bids is that there's a letter I referenced, which will include all of these details. It goes to every eligible customer, includes the FAQ and the methods of opt-out. These are the methods of opt-out in one slide. There is the postage paid mailer that Ralph talked about, that somebody can send back in that initial opt-out period. All of the other methods can be done at any time. The mailer is for the initial launch period, but anybody at any time can just call the helpline number and just give us their information to opt out of the program or opt in. You can use the website form. Again, someday we can do it in person. You know, when we do office hours, you can come and give us your information or some other way that we might meet up, or by email. We have an email, you can contact us. So the asterisks on the last 4 options say, again, you can use them to opt in or opt out at any time. So those are always available.
And a side note, the postage paid mailer is not paid by your town, paid for by
the supplier. Yep,
it's paid for by the supplier.
Yep, so no cost at any point to the town. So just really run through the common questions and then we'll answer questions. But common questions we get, and I'm probably going to be redundant here, but does this replace my utility company? No. All of this is through the utility bill. It's a line item change in the supply section, does not affect the delivery section. And they have no reason. People have asked, well, will they charge me more delivery if we're doing this since they're not making the supply decision? They don't make money on supply. There is no impact on their business model because of this program. So they're not going to be punitive. Why are you doing this? How can you do this? Well, it's set up by the order and it's structured to have those 3 overlapping goals as a public benefit. It's why it's allowed to operate and why it's allowed to operate as an opt-out program. You know, it's basically taking advantage of the default and the power of numbers.
Just the obvious. I'm not getting anything out of this, folks. Okay. I'm not getting anything out of this except a good feeling that I'm trying to research things to decide whether to or not of this program. There's nothing else involved with it for me, okay, or anybody else.
All right. So will this save me money? The supply contract, we structure it to be somewhere between a 5 to 10% better than what people have been paying for supply through the utility company, but it's not guaranteed. In parentheses, to separate from community solar, you guys should look into it. It's a guaranteed savings there. Am I locked into this program for the duration? No, anybody could exit freely at any time. Now, this is the one based on bad experiences with private ESCOs. What happens after the supply contract ends? Will the rates suddenly go crazy? Nope, it's a fixed rate for a fixed period. And if the town does not want to do it again to repeat the process, everyone without any action just automatically goes back to the supply, to the utility making the supply decision. So there's no need for any actions. Nobody has to do anything. And as a matter of fact, to point out what an opt-out means is if you want to be in the program, you don't have to do anything either. That's what we mean by opt-out. You have to choose to opt out. If you don't choose to do anything and the program launches, you would be in. So it's the idea is to make it easy. The last common question, where does the energy come from? We've talked about this by requirement of the order. It has to be renewables from New York State. So it's not like, you know, Texas wind or something far away. This is benefiting New York State and bringing jobs and cleaner air to New York State. Community solar, just for distinction, it's even more local. You know, if you subscribe to community solar, it has to be a solar farm right in your utility territory. I left Central Hudson in there, but it would be nice to. Just pointing out, we have we have more meetings coming up for Putnam Valley. We are working with some other communities, as I mentioned, Anybody could go to hudsonvalleycommunitypower.com/events to find the meeting links for any of these meetings. And then, this will always be available. So just more events, but please, again, share your ideas with us for how we can be more effective in our outreach. That's my one ask. And now we're ready for questions, Ralph. And do you want to read through the chat window, or do you want to make a statement and I'll take a look through the chat window?
Oh, well, I just want to check here because there is an email up here. Afterwards, people are thinking about this, talking about it with their family, etc., or brainstorming. Is the email that's on the screen now where they should send questions that would go directly to you?
Yep, that's us. That's my team right there. I'm working with me in Beacon. Roberto's he lives in Cold Spring. Jake's over in Mahopac. So we're a local team. So yeah, that's that. And then we share that email.
Right. So just take note of that, folks. If there's a question that you want answered immediately, that's the place to go. And I think you'll find sometimes you say, well, yeah, but what about this? And you will have a question afterwards. And one of the reasons for picking Jeff to continue with us has been his willingness to answer any and all questions and to do them promptly. So I think you'll find a good response there. By the way, one more review. Have we already signed this up? No. We are part of the education outreach part of this now. That's what we're doing. So, and that's what we want to do now. If there's any questions, you can ask them now or email them to Jeff.
Let me take a look here at or chat window is the best one right now. I'm not looking at my email just for right now, but I think we answered a lot of these. But Leo had asked, in the event that one commits to CCA, how would one be able to compare CCA pricing to NYSEG pricing on a month-to-month basis to obtain the lowest rate? So that's what we talked about. We do publish the rates, we follow them, and we publish them. And we continue to be a presence doing outreach, and we often talk about how we're doing, even when the news is bad. And with the pandemic, we had some surprisingly low rates for our other CCAs, but things are still looking promising there. But transparency is very important to us. And I will share with you, just if you want to Google it, I'll mention it. If you Google power to choose, and you put in DPS, which stands for Department of Public Service, it will get you right to the Power to Choose website, which the state set up, where you go in there, you put in your zip code, and you get your utilities rate, supply rate, and you get a whole list of other ESCOs that will offer you supply rates on that one page. And that's the site I use on a month-to-month basis, tracking the utility rate. So, question, if Putnam Valley decides to go for CCA, does everyone in PV automatically get enrolled? We've talked about that. We talked about
there is a question here that I have. Which I can help answer. How can people who couldn't attend tonight's meeting be able to access the video? We're working with Tony Arian, and he's going to try to, and he's very good at these things. He will attempt to put this on the town website, and perhaps he'll even be able to put it on channel 18 and 20, or 18 or 20, wherever those videos go. Who knows? This could be my big break in show business. I face on channel 18 or something. So, okay. But anyway, we're going to try and publicize these things as much as we possibly can.
All right, great. Yes, thank you. And then we'll definitely be available, the recording. Is it truly a fixed rate? For how long a period is it fixed? We answered that one. Yes, truly a fixed rate, and for a limited period. To date, it's been 2-year contracts, but that could vary. We'll have to wait and see how long the contract is, but it will definitely be fixed. Karen asked, can individual residents opt out? Absolutely, at any time, no cost. Then we did the comparison. I think you repeated that question, Leo. I answered the question by Ina about, is there enough renewables being produced in the state? So currently to date, yes, but then that's that wonderful problem we hope to have, where there'll be some challenges on the supply. Gina asked, will I still have the freedom to choose my own supplier if I find a cheaper supplier? Absolutely. Can opt out and then enter into a contract with another supplier at any time. Gina also asks, is there a window of opportunity to opt in if you choose initially to opt out? Anytime you can opt back into the program. There's no window that will close. And then Eileen asks, I have Green Mountain Energy. Should I cancel now or wait until this is available? If you're happy with it, stay with it because we don't know if this is going to launch. We'll continue to track probably, within, after we do the outreach period, which is about 2 months from now, we'll be looking at the market, pay attention to our presentations. We'll talk about how it's looking. At that point in time, if you want to be automatically included, you cannot, to make sure there's sufficient time, you could end your agreement if there's no penalty. And Green Mountain Energy has actually been very good. No penalties. You can end it then to be available, but you can always too, even if you keep it, wait till the program launches, then you could end and contact us and join the program, and it'll take about one billing cycle. So it's up to you. And also be a good consumer. If you're like me and you like to poke your cable company every once in a while to say, can you give me a better rate? Green Mountain Energy has been lovely to people who've contacted them about a CCA program being in their community, and they say, hey, this is their rate. Can you do better? I've heard Green Mountain Energy has actually been very good about getting a more competitive rate. So it never hurts to ask is one of the lessons there. That's the end of the chat questions. People, please feel free to unmute and ask questions directly. This is my promised awkward silence. I'm going to stay silent to give people time to ask questions.
And what I'm going to do is, Jeff, to break the awkward silence, I'm going to suggest that we don't wait too long because we do have the email that can go directly to you to get those anyone's questions answered. And obviously, people have written down ones that came to mind quickly, and so they can use that email. They can come to any other presentation, and there's lots of ways to. There's a phone number there, so. There's lots of ways to get any questions that come up to your mind answered, really.
Yep, happy to answer them at any time.
Well, I'm gonna, Jeff, I know I might be a little quick, but I don't want to take up people's time if they're wondering about getting to a certain TV show or something. So I want to thank you for really explaining all these things, and I want to thank everybody who took the time to come and be educated about these things. I really appreciate it, and we're looking out for the community. So let's keep it up, okay?
Yeah, so I like doing it in this format. Great doing it with you, Ralph. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to everybody soon. Hope to see you on another Zoom or hear the questions. Thank you all.
All right. And my last thing is please do share ideas with us about how we can be good in our outreach. That's my last ask. And for those leaving, have a good night. I'll leave this up for a second. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to stay here in case people have any questions. And Ralph, if you're rushing off to a TV show, I don't mind staying here for a few more minutes.